If you're wearing 12 hats, answering every question, and wonder why success feels like it's slowing you down, this episode's for you. Pete Steege joins me to talk about founders' folk, accidental CEOs, and the identity shifts it takes to actually scale without becoming the problem. The best news is he also has some fabulous self-diagnosis gifts at the end of the episode. Leadership today isn't just about scaling. It's about navigating constant uncertainty, market disruptions, and high-pressure decisions. If you're dealing with chaos, bottlenecks, and relentless pressure, welcome to the Business Emergency Room. Hey, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. We are going to talk about the topic of accidental CEOs. I think many of you will feel like they're in that category. Those of us who started businesses from scratch, who came up with new technology or grew a business or a service that we saw a gap in and have had a lot of success and are at this point where our business is maybe larger than we'd ever hoped or intended. And now we're running a corporation with all that entails and an umbrella that is maybe bigger than is manageable at times. And I have the best and most appropriate guest to talk about that today. His name is Pete Steege. And he is the founder of B2B Clarity, which, of course, with me walking around in chaos, is a fabulous company name, very suitable. He's a growth strategies, a rewired engineer and a CEO advisor, and coins the term accidental CEO everywhere. He's an author and a speaker also. And has a long background in marketing and communications, but is what I would call one of us, and started his career as an engineer. So welcome, Pete.
Thank you, Maartje. Very great to be with you today.
So let's dive into it. Can you give us an example from the world in which you play where there was a bit of a crossroad of what we would call a business emergency or disruption and an accidental CEO?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, you framed it up really well, the description of the situation that a lot of us find ourselves in, where we have this expertise in what we do. We're really good at something, and we find ourselves out over our skis, right, in our business where we're leading a company, and there's so many things we don't know what to do to take it to the next step. The example I wanted to share was a software test engineering company that I worked with. They came to me as they were 2 years into their business, and they actually were doing really well revenue-wise for a small company. They had $1 million in revenue, but the challenge they had was their solution was perfect for large, complex enterprise software test engineering environments. So they needed to win clients that were enterprise clients, and they were these 3 partner engineers that had no idea how to even do a sales call, let alone build a sales and marketing strategy that would win them a big enterprise deal like that. Their success had come from enterprises that knew them from their previous work, right? So in their case, they were a perfect example of this. Such expert, smart people in their space. What we did first was had them step back from the solution and focus more on the purpose and the meaning, the value that they provided for their enterprise clients. They as engineers, they knew very well the speeds and feeds and the capabilities of what they could do to solve a problem, but it's complex. It often is. And what we did was first rolled back that to what I call true story for their business that encapsulated in a very brief way what they could do for this enterprise, right? Translated their product into the client's value. And the key turning point with them was a 2-word phrase. And I often find it's 2 words, maybe 3 words, maybe 5 that tell the story. It's not a tagline, but it's the core, it's the foundation of everything, including the tagline. In their case, it was shift left. which is the name of a terminology, a name of an ideology really in software test engineering that all the test engineer executives knew from working in their career, but it was always an unreachable aspiration way to do things. Well, their business model essentially was following that shift left strategy, making that work.
Facilitating that.
Yeah, they knew how to do that. So they could say, we're shift left done right.
Yeah.
And that traveled. We didn't over engineer their sales and marketing effort because that's not where they were. But by creating that I'll call it viral message about their value, in 4 months, they landed a multi-million-dollar Fortune 50 account because that story traveled within the business in a way that they didn't need to be there to push it through. So that's the story I'll start with.
Okay, well, I love the story because it's a story that has many tenets in it of what we see time and time again. What I'm hearing definitely as the primary here is a little lost in translation, right, between how you operate and the language and the world you operate in and those where your customers are. And I'm really glad that they enlisted help to actually get there. And that leads me to my next question on this specific story. Because asking for help is really hard. And the story around accidental CEOs and extreme growth is also that, yes, typically these people are used to doing everything, or we feel we can do anything. And I think if we put our minds to it, it kind of is, right? We can do anything, but we can't do everything. And sometimes we're also not the most efficient at trying to do all of it because it's not our core expertise. So in this example, what do you think was really the trigger for them to actually enlist help? Because that's actually quite hard for many. And initially, it sounds like the translation was enough to get business, right, and get that business to grow. But was there also then a part of the conversation about where do you now need to look at expanding the team you have to add the capacity and the capability to achieve your mission?
Yes, I found that the key element that opens the door for these accidental CEOs for help is humility. There are what I'll call arrogant people out there that aren't open to the idea that they need help, right? And I can't help people like that. And so Elliot was awesome in that he reached out to me because he knew, he said, Pete, I've seen marketing work in the businesses I've worked for before, and it's magic, and I just don't get it. I need help, right? So it was an openness to growth mindset, I guess you could call it, right? So that was the key opening. And I think for them, there was just they saw the potential. It was the gap between their potential and where they were and how to take that next step was the pressure that got them to reach out for help. But then your point about beyond the clarity of the story, what did they need to do to grow with their team? The great thing about this meaning focus and this true story that we did first is I believe that is the power, that is the thing that will drive business success inside the company as well as outside the company. Quite often I've seen, and I suspect you have too, where success is one of the hardest and the most stressful things for businesses because the small team that they started with that they could meet with everybody every day grows to be a team where they're not in every meeting and not everybody knows the customers, right? Yeah. It unravels. People start having their own ideas and they're not aligned.
Yeah. What's your peak? The only way to go is down temporarily sometimes, right? It's very hard to stay at that top for long periods of time because that intricate balance of having reached that target. Yeah. Yes. That then starts to topple because unless you try and do the ballerina dance for endless periods of time, right?
And it doesn't scale because let's say you succeed at the ballerina dance. What does that mean? the problem grows bigger because you've grown even bigger, right? So there's never be relief. It's just a matter of time when you get overwhelmed.
Yeah, and trying to capture that essence of what is the spirit of you that got you there, because that is also still going to be the spirit that gets you to the next piece. Yes. But the configuration around it might need to adapt. And Pete, what I'm also hearing is, and I hear that time and time again, right, that we find it easier to hire specialist help or to seek specialist help in areas where we really know that's far from our own bed, right? So as the example you gave, saying, okay, somebody said, listen, marketing is really not my thing. And so can we talk a little bit about how that maybe then opens the door and the thinking, having that vulnerability to then ask for that specialist help, how that then opens up the door for a careful conversation about saying, well, what else might not be best use of your time, right, as we're growing? And have you seen that where that then leads to further conversation about some more nuanced elements of reorganizing the team to facilitate further growth?
Yeah. The way I hear what you just said is that first, up until the point they ask for help that first time, they have felt that everything was their job, right? It had to be. And it should be at first, maybe. Yeah. When they finally do, yes, I found that more often the path to success for CEOs is what they stop doing more than what they add to the activities that they add, right? It's taking away more than adding. And, to your point, there's some self-knowledge needed or some assessment needed. So that's an early step when I work with them that, where are we strong? Where am I strong? And where are we not strong? And where are we broken? And, rather than, in your planning and in your status meetings, talking about everything we're doing, there's so much power in focusing on where it hurts, right? And focusing on where the problem is. So I'm a big advocate of going through a process of identifying the top 2 or 3 pain points, priorities, gaps in the business. And that's where almost all the effort should be.
Yeah, you're talking my language, the triage, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's the way you talk about things, for sure.
Yeah, although I do think there is also, particularly in the examples, I think, where you talk about, and we talked about the peak, right? You've reached the top and you knew you're at the top and somehow you now find yourself on the down whilst you were at your height. And you feel like you're in growth, but why are you then back on a downslope, right? I think at those times, and I think that's where you started too, it also helps sometimes to diagnose that success, right? And pull out, say, well, what was the stuff that got you there and still stands? And let's remember that and then use that to actually, work the dysfunction or say, how do we use the stuff that is good?
Yes.
And then address the dysfunction to put that together with a new framework to scale the next peak, huh?
Yes, I totally agree. And, I found that you're going to hear me talk about that true story a lot because I believe that's the foundation of so much for these CEOs. But when you are on that hopefully temporary downslope and things can feel really scary or dark or tense for the team or for you, for the business, the more you can continue to go back to the true story as the important thing for you as the CEO. In other words, it's not all about this quarter's revenue. Frankly, the less you can think about this quarter's revenue, the better. And rather, as the CEO, you're the keeper of the flame. Yeah. And your focus is, we're going there. We're going there. And you know what? It's not a straight road. We're going to go through some valleys. We're going to have some achy muscles. It's going to be a hard trip. But it's, and actually you'll try to find a way to celebrate the variety of the trip, right? That I wonder what next quarter is going to be like, but it's going to be a great adventure, right? To the extent you can represent that and share that with your team, and also represent it and share it outside the company, keeping the evergreen thought front and center, regardless of all the temporal things, that's really powerful.
So let's talk a little bit about the communication then of that flame, because, with accidental CEOs, originally, when you're there with your core team with whom you started, that team kind of lives and breathes that core, right? That's been in you for years in the build up. So as you're then scaling and becoming a much larger organizations where either people internally to your company or partners or potential clients need to also see that and understand that, what are some of the top tips or some of the things to think about as an accidental CEO and how you communicate that and how you need to put some effort in the communication around that now that it's no longer innate in everybody who works with you?
Yeah. One thing that helps with that is something I call market singularity. And there's an author named Chris Lockheed. I don't know if you know him. Mm-hmm. He writes the book I like is Play Bigger, but all of his books are about category design. And it's the idea that every company could and should be the only option for what they do for their target market. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of go back to the story of the shift left. Mm-hmm. For my client, there was no other option that these enterprises had for shift left done right. Nobody else was talking about the solution that way. So finding, and that's not guaranteed, that's sustainable advantage, right? You have mm-hmm. to find that competitive advantage. It's a strategic thing. But when you do, and your message communicates, we're different. We do things this way. And it's not just your product. It might be your people. It might be your location. It's all the things that make you special. Having that clarity about, they're the ones that do that. And if we want to do it that way, we're not going to do a vendor evaluation of 6 different companies on a spreadsheet, right? We're going to decide to do that or not. Yeah. To the extent you can do that, that helps you with your with you talking to the market, because now it's blue ocean. You're talking about what you offer, and if they want it, they get it, right? You are a category leader in the category you created. Yeah. That helps you externally. It also helps your team, and you need to keeping everybody on that same page. It helps everybody when they have that identity of that unique thing that we do, it's in their minds and hearts as they go forward, right? So that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to mention is in this age of AI content, there is a storm brewing. It's already started, a content flood, I call it. We're all experiencing it. Yes. Our inboxes are filling up with pretty decent content, actually. It's getting better. It's getting better. True. A lot better than the spam from 10 years ago. But and it's harder to distinguish from the stuff that's important, right? So you have a choice as a business. Do you join the party and turn up the volume? Because you can. AI can help you write 10 times as many articles and social feeds, things very easily. And what does that do? You're adding to the flood. You're not helping your clients because they're struggling to keep their head above water with that as it is. So by adding to that, you're not helping them. And by the way, they won't notice you because you're just like everybody else. Rather, I think the real opportunity, and it's not easy, is find a way to do less, turn down the volume, but be more human, be more authentic, meaningful. Yeah. Be real. Yeah. And it's not easy. And I can't tell you specifically how to do that. That should be a clue that is very powerful because it's not easy to do. So the companies that decide to focus on that and invest the time and the effort to develop that meaningful interaction and engagement, they're going to come out ahead.
Yeah, that makes you much more attractive, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You'll stand out by your quietness.
Yeah, and we have to remember that particularly in B2B, so few is real transactional purchasing, right? So
Yes.
office supplies maybe, or raw base chemicals or whatever. But there is, of course, there's some stuff, but in almost all services and in many of the products too, we're looking for a partnership because the success of the supply drives the success of our business. So if there is a relationship before we've let the contract, it's much easier to do that,
Yes.
right? And
And
if
Maartje,
I understand you, I can't be friends with somebody that I don't know anything about or don't understand their why, right? And it's the same in business partnership. It's not that different. It's how we relate as people.
totally, I agree. And I'll even use your business supply example. You need a relationship there too, right? Think of the supply chain disruptions we went through, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree. Relationships
Yeah.
is so important.
Yeah.
And the more AI comes in, the more decoupled we come, the harder
Yeah.
the bigger the opportunity, you could say, to
Yeah.
create relationships.
Yeah, and even there, right? The office, because the base chemicals, if that's critical to your business, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there you see, for instance, that change out suppliers just not done because even when it is not functional, because the hassle of changing out sometimes is
Yes.
harder than dealing with the one you know. But maybe in the office supply example, there's places where office supplies are also critical, right? And you could be the
Yes.
supplier to the businesses where they're always on time and they never run
Right.
out. Or you
Yes.
could be the niche company that supplies to everybody who uses it as consumables and makes it so easy that people still don't change, right? There is a niche there too, but the personal relationship might be different or less.
Can I offer an example related to that? I had a
Yeah,
client
sure.
that was struggling with growth in the telecommunications industry. So they were, providing the phone systems for companies.
Yeah.
And to your point, that's a lot like office supplies today, right? There's so many just generic options to get your phone system set up today. Well, what we understood was their true success, where they did the best, was what I'll call them critical communication companies. So think of hotels and schools, places where the phone system was still a strategic, important piece.
Yeah.
Right. It really was important to those companies. So they changed their focus, narrowed their focus on companies that really cared about their phones. Right. And that was, to your example, important provider,
business
strategic
continuity.
provider. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
My last question then, in the interest of time also, going back to accidental CEOs and business continuity, right? What I've seen a little bit too often is in that success and in them being the spider in the web and in everything, they actually become at times the biggest continuity risk. So looking at what you see and who you meet, how can people, because we all love Dr. Google, right? So how can we, as an accidental CEO, self-diagnose, or what are some of the symptoms that maybe we are too much the spider in the web, and that we might need to look at our remit and how we change that and distribute that differently, or maybe seek some help in restructuring that? What are some of the symptoms that we might need to put some work in the current setup?
Yeah, I love to talk about the founder fog. This is a problem that is the core of a lot of this pain for startup founders. So there are three things. They have a vague vision, so they haven't crystallized that story. They have scattered execution. They're not focused on the priorities, and they have unclear roles in the organization, conflict, and it's just not clarified. So those three things, that founder fog, I see the solution is for the CEO to have three identity shifts. Mm-hmm. One is from expert to strategist. Right. So this domain expertise is what they're leaning on, and they need to change their role to be focused on strategy. From peer to boss, right? It's just the team, just a bunch of, they need to change that role. They need to be, take the role of the keeper of the flame, right? And delegate things as necessary. And then finally, from builder to scaler. Right? It's not just about doing more and harder. It's about changing the dimensions, right? And shifting the 10x, right? That you got to think about things differently with the 10x.
Yeah.
So I found that's a core way that accidental CEOs can look forward and say, how can I get better? Well, you got to change your role in these 3 ways.
Yeah. I love that term, founders fog, and definitely very recognizable. What I'm also hearing in that is that maybe an easy test without it, because I think as a founder, it's maybe not that foggy in your head because you kind of know.
Or you know it so well.
And you can pivot on a dime's notice. The challenge is that if you go and ask the people you work with what they play, if you would ask them and take the time to say, hey, where do you think we're going? What do you think our strategy is stuff? And what you get played back, if that has too much variation, etc., that's not helpful, right? It totally takes actually a lot of time to put some good vocabulary around all these things in a manner that it actually empowers people, which is a lovely whole other topic altogether, of course. Hey, Pete, I think we could talk for hours on end, but that's not what we have time for today. So if people, after hearing you here today, are like, hey, this resonates with me, I want to talk to Pete or know more or check out some of your books and all that, what do they do? Where do they go?
I've got some free resources for your listeners just for this topic on my website at b2b-clarity.com/emergency. So cool. If you guys go there, what you'll find is I have an assessment. We were talking about that called an accidental CEO audit that they can take and I'll send them back an analysis of kind of what their gaps are at a real high level. I have some frameworks and worksheets from my new book, as well as a way to order it there. And also, if they want to reach out to me, if they're ready to get on a triage call right away, there's a way to reach me as well there.
Oh, I love that. And as I said, right, we all love to do Dr. Google and do self-diagnosis. That's always step number 1, right? So lovely gift. Thank you so much for that. We will put also all these links in the show notes if that went a little bit fast, but b2bclarity.com/emergency. Pete, thank you so much for being my guest today, talking about founders fog, and the accidental CEO. It's definitely a recurring topic, but in a new spotlight with some different and new insights. So thank you for that. And thank you to the listener for tuning in. I hope you check out what Pete's offering.
Thank you, Maartje.
For this episode of the Business Emergency Room, if you are currently dealing with chaos or disruption in your business, please reach out. You can email, text, or call, and I will find a way to connect with you within 24 hours. I've helped others steer out of the storm, and I know I can help you too. Talk soon. Please like, subscribe, and share.